Thank you, Senator Milne. Senator Macdonald.
Mr Acting Deputy President, look, anyone who is seriously following this debate and had heard Senator Canavan a little while ago would appreciate that nothing the Greens, nothing Senator Milne or Senator Ludwig have said stand up to a factual assessment. And what did I say? Sorry, Ludlam. You know, can I just say this to a lot of people who I know follow Senator Ludlam's technical savvy in these areas, and you know he gets on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and with all the buzzwords, he's on it right now. But can I just say to you people, please, please carefully look at anything Senator Ludlam or Senator Milne will tell you, because history shows most everything of what they say is not supported by fact, and it is fact simply lies. And you know, it's easy to pick the buzzwords. It's easy to pick the prejudices. You know, these big US corporate giants.
Senator Macdonald, please take your seat. Point of order, Senator.
Yeah, point of order, Mr Acting Deputy President. Senator Macdonald, you've been here for decades, if not hundreds of years. You know very well that it's unparliamentary to accuse other senators in this place or the other of lying. So I ask you to just withdraw that and then carry on with your strange rant.
I'll let that one go. It was part of a wide-ranging debate, but I just urge caution, Senator Macdonald. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Acting Deputy President. You know, strange rant, that's okay. See, this is the thing with the Greens political party. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Now, here is a party who is talking about surrendering Australia's sovereignty. Now, which party, Mr Acting Deputy President, can I ask you, would have the one world government, you know, that wants Australia to sign up and be bound by every single international treaty brought on by anyone around the globe? And you only have to look at the facts of these issues to realise that most everything you hear from the people like Senator Ludlam and Senator Milne simply are not supported by truth and accuracy. Sure, you know, pick all the prejudices, you know, fracking, big end of town, nuclear, GMOs, and the US corporate predators. I mean, never mind about any other corporate predators, but US corporate predators, they're the real ones. Now, Senator Canavan, in a very measured address previously, clearly indicated the facts of this. It's obvious that no one from the Greens political party has actually read the agreements that have been entered into so far, and Senator Canavan quite rightly assisted those of the Greens political party who were interested in truth and accuracy, and I'm not sure that there's many, on what Section 18.1 of the Korean Free Trade Agreement said. And he read it out. I could repeat it, but I won't take the time of the Senate. Now, Mr Acting Deputy President, the Australian governments, not just this government but previous governments as well, have entered into a number of interstate dispute settlement arrangements over a number of years. In free trade agreements so far, we have, in free trade, and bilateral agreements, we already have interstate dispute settlement provisions in Australia's 21 investor protection and promotion agreements. And these include with countries such as Singapore, Thailand, Chile, 10 Asian countries and New Zealand. We're also have those agreements with Argentina, China, Czech Republic. I haven't sort of got to the big predator US government yet that the Greens like to talk about. I'm sure they're here, but you'll see with all of these other agreements, with all of these other countries, we have entered into these sorts of agreements with Argentina, China, the Czech Republic, Egypt, Hong Kong, Hungary, India, Indonesia, Laos, Lithuania, Mexico, Pakistan, Papua New Guinea, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Romania, Sri Lanka, Turkey, Uruguay, Vietnam, just to name some of them, Mr. Acting Deputy President. And can I just try and put a bit of truth and accuracy into this debate? Can I just indicate to the Senate the types of obligations that are covered by ISDS? One of them is that foreigners and locals should be given the same treatment, the similar treatment. Now, how bad is that? It applies to Australians. Do we have different rules for people from other countries? Talk about xenophobia in the Greens political party. It seems to know no bounds. What we're saying in these agreements is that foreigners from one country should be given similar treatment to foreigners from another country. So, the Chinese in their trade agreements with Australia will be treated the same as the Americans, will be treated the same as the Hungarians, will be treated the same as the South Africans. Now, what sort of problem does anyone see in that? Mr. Acting Deputy President, these agreements also limit the circumstances under which expropriation can take place, and they require provision of adequate compensation. So, under the Australian Constitution, if the Australian government expropriates a property for good reason, they are required to pay compensation. But the Greens don't think the same should apply to other countries who have property rights in Australia, and they're expropriated by the federal government. Okay to pay Australians compensation because government's got to under our constitution, but forget the foreigners, we'll just take their property and won't allow for any compensation. These obligations also provide non-discriminatory treatment and compensation in the case of armed conflict or civil strife in whatever country Australia has these arrangements with. And Mr. Acting Deputy President, while the Greens political party think this is not appropriate, but countries who invest, or companies from other countries that invest in a different country, should be able to freely deal with profits that they make as a result of their investments. Otherwise, of course, they wouldn't be making the investments, and of course most countries around the world are seeking investment in their country to help their countries, but expecting that those who invest will make profits and will be able to take those profits home as they intended. In fact, the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee yesterday had a very interesting roundtable meeting with all of the ambassadors from the Arab countries in the world. It was a great get-together, talking about trade, two-way trade between the two countries. But I asked all the ambassadors just to quickly run through and indicate which of their commodities or services they would like to sell more of to Australia. And some of the ambassadors did respond to that, as you would expect, more clothing, more chemicals, more olive oil. But a lot of them said, look, what we want from Australia, we want Australia to invest in our countries, to bring Australia's expertise into our countries, because we know that's good for Australia because they'll make profits and help employ some Australians. But we want that because it helps our countries to develop. And yet the Greens would, by not allowing these ISDS provisions, seek to make it difficult for Australians to take action against these countries if these countries introduced laws that expropriated Australian investments in their country without compensation. And that's what this is all about, Mr. Acting Deputy President. Please, to anyone who is following this debate, do not take anything the Greens say as accurate, but please look into it and please look at history. You will find that almost everything the Greens political party will stir you up about turns out to be absolutely incorrect, and time doesn't permit me to go through all of those. But, Mr Acting Deputy President, again can I say the hypocrisy, the sheer hypocrisy of the Greens political party in saying that we're surrendering Australia's sovereignty to international corporate giants, when everything the Greens do in this parliament is all about international treaties and how Australia should subject itself to the dictates of all of these international United Nations and other bodies. They don't want Australia to have a view on uranium or climate change. They don't want Australians who, by the majority, have a different view to some of the international community who have a view on climate change. They want Australia just to accept willy-nilly the views of these international bodies without allowing the Australian people to have their say. Now, the Australian people clearly share my view on the irrational irrational accusations of the Greens about climate change. We all accept the climate is changing. I mean, I often say, once upon a time the world was covered in ice and snow, and you know, clearly over the eons that's changed. Once upon a time the centre of Australia was a rainforest. Clearly that's changed. Clearly climate changes. But there is no accepted evidence at the moment that man's emissions of carbon has been responsible for it. There is no evidence that there has been global warming for 20 years. In fact, the actual scientific evidence suggests otherwise. But the Greens would have Australia's sovereignty. Well, that's true. I'm sorry. I can give you 50 scientists who say that. 50 scientists.
Senator
because they're not...
McDonald, Senator McDonald, please address your comments through the chair.
Well, thank you for that unbiased ruling, Mr Chairman. I'm being attacked by members of the Greens political party.
Senator
you don't
McDonald,
pull them up.
Senator
you
McDonald,
don't pull them up.
Take your seat. Take your seat, Senator McDonald. All I asked you was to address your comments through the chair, which you know is accepted protocol. Thank you.
If you look at the record, you'll find that all of my comments are through the chair, and even my response to interjections. Was through the chair. And please, Mr Acting Deputy President, do your job.
Senator McDonald, all I asked you was that you address your comments through the chair, which you know is accepted protocol. You were pointing and yelling at Senator Siewert. You can point and yell at me, but please address your comments through the chair.
I would never point or yell at the chair.
Oh, sorry, Senator. Sorry, Senator McDonald. Please take your seat. Senator Singh.
I was on my feet before you. No, I was on my feet before you.
And Senator McDonald, please take your chair. Senator Singh.
Acting Deputy President, Senator McDonald is reflecting on the chair, and I ask you to rule accordingly.
As I was just saying, Senator McDonald, please just address your comments through the chair. You understand the protocols, and let's continue the debate.
Mr Acting Deputy President, I don't need your protection against the interjections of the likes of Senator Siewert, but if you are making those rulings, please be consistent. And I will continue on the line that Senator Siewert doesn't like, because it's not a scientist that she and her group of funny people think are good scientists, then they're all to be ignored. You only listen to those who repeat your mantra, Senator Siewert. There are credible scientists around the world. Yeah, you laugh, but then I laugh at your ridiculous comments, and so I accept that. But, Mr Acting Deputy President, perhaps you could help me address through the chair by stopping the consistent interjections I get from the Greens political party.
Senator Macdonald, I will ask Senator Siewert to cease the interjections and remind the chamber, everyone in the chamber, that interjections are disorderly.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President.
Sorry, Senator Siewert's on her feet.
Chair, I do accept your ruling. However, Senator Macdonald was speaking across the chamber directly to me, so I responded. I apologise to the chamber, but if you could ask him not to therefore address his comments directly to me across the chamber.
Okay. Thank you, Senator
I
Siewert.
won't interject and respond.
And I will remind Senator Macdonald, please address your comments through the chair.
Mr Acting Deputy President, the Australian government has done an absolutely fantastic job in relation to trade. It's a bit like debt, you know, Mr Acting Deputy President. People can talk about trade and they think, oh, trade's something governments do, doesn't really impact upon us, that's a government thing. A bit like debt, you know. Well, debt's just something the government fixes up, doesn't really affect us. Of course, what we really need to do is for Australians to understand that debt and the $700 billion of debt that the Labor Party ran up does in fact impact upon them very, very seriously. Because like people's own household budget, where you borrow from a lender, someday you've got to pay it back. And until you pay it back, you've got to pay interest on it. But people say, oh, you know, that's the government. Well, sorry, the government does not have any money. The government only uses the money of taxpayers. So it is taxpayers that will have to pay off Labor's debt, which will approach $700 billion. And it is the taxpayers who have to pay, the $30 million a day that we're paying in interest on the Labor Party's debt. The Labor Party supported by the Greens political party. $30 million a day. Imagine how many schools, imagine how many hospitals we could build every day with the amount we are now paying to foreign lenders on the debt run up by the Labor Greens government. And it's the same with trade, Mr Acting Deputy President. People think, oh, trade, that's something governments do, that's good, but doesn't really impact upon us. Sorry, trade is very important to Australia. We are a country that is blessed with natural resources. We are blessed with fine educational institutions. We're blessed with a very energetic and innovative population. But we need to trade to be able to use those assets we have, and that means more jobs for Australians. And these free trade agreements, which Andrew Robb has brilliantly concluded in a very short period of time, mean jobs and wealth for all Australians. And I know Senator Milne is talking about how the corporate giants are ripping off all the poor people in the world. I just remind Senator Milne, of course, that she is part of the 1% of the world population earning very, very high incomes. And yet that never seems to worry Senator Milne. It's okay for her to blame the US corporate giants and the wealthy people around the world everywhere. I just remind people, Senator Milne is one of those who is in the 1% of highest income earners in the world. And we never seem to get that recognition when we hear Senator Milne viciously attacking corporate investors into our country and indeed other countries. Now, Mr Acting Deputy President, trade is important, and the free trade agreements have considerably assisted Australians in their lifestyle, in their way of living, more importantly in their ability to be fully employed. Those free trade agreements and other trade agreements we've made with people, in many instances, do have these investor-state dispute settlement arrangements. They've been in place for ages. the Labor Party have entered into agreements where those conditions do apply, and they apply for a reason. They apply for a reason, and that is because they're fair and they treat people equally. It does mean to say that if Australian companies invest somewhere else, those other countries will not confiscate Australian assets without the sort of compensation they would apply to their own nationals. Now, Mr Acting Deputy President, the Greens political party would have you believe that this means corporations from around the world, not just American, although they're the only ones you hear from the Greens political party, but the corporations around the world can dictate to Australia how Australia should legislate internally. The agreements that we enter into do actually provide that matters relating to health and the environment, and Senator Kavanagh went into this in some details, are not impacted by these investor-state dispute settlement arrangements. So Australia is free to provide whatever it believes is the right legislation in relation to many issues which are clearly set out in these agreements. What they do say, though, that if the Australian government, for all the right reasons, does confiscate property, then the people whose property is confiscated, no matter which country they come from, will be treated the same way as Australian companies and Australian individuals. That is, if for the right reasons the government of the day confiscates property, people will be properly compensated for that confiscation. Now, what's wrong with that? Can I ask the Greens political party, what is wrong with that? That countries who invest in Australia and whose property is confiscated would be treated the same as Australians. Unfortunately, time has escaped me. I was going to raise the Labor Party, Greens political party, stupidity of the ban on live cattle to Indonesia. And that is a very good case in point. Unfortunately, as I say, time's not going to allow me to elaborate on that. But Indonesian companies who had invested in Australia on the basis of a trade arrangement in live cattle that had been in place for decades and whose property was made worthless by a decision, a stupid decision of an Australian government, then they should have been in some way compensated for that. But unfortunately, time's not going to allow me to continue on that vein, perhaps some other time. But I would urge the Senate
Thank you, Senator Macdonald.
reject
your
this
time
bill.
is up. Senator Wright.